Good morning, traders. Today is Tuesday, July 13th, and my name is Charles. This is the Pirate Traders live stream. All right. Well, what are we looking at in the markets here today? Well, yesterday the market had a push higher, and then it built kind of built some support in here at higher prices when we did a bit of rotating in the afternoon, and then had one final push higher later in the day. We did get a spike in the M period, so this one little set of single prints at the top here, we called that a spike. So that means spike rules are in play this morning. Spike rules tell us that if we open below the spike, which we will, that is bearish. Okay, it's not extremely bearish, it's just slightly bearish. Okay. We are going to open inside the previous day's range. I don't necessarily expect any sort of counter auction due to the overnight activity. The overnight activity was net short, but literally over the last 20 minutes or so, they've pulled back up here into the value area from yesterday. So that just kind of that's the counter auction. You know, the market doesn't need to pull back any more than that. So yeah, opening inside the previous day's range, we will expect chop. We opened below these levels, so these are all repaired. So we're expecting chop here early in the morning. I would think the market's going to grind around a little bit in this range. As we push our way higher and we get into these nodes of volume up here around 43.75. We have the higher node of volume from the last part of the day yesterday, and then this node of volume right here from the overnight, where you can see that's where a majority of the trade took place in the overnight. And then, of course, the prominent point of control right there at the base of that volume. This will probably act as resistance here. So as the market's doing its thing and it's chopping around, if when it gets up into this range, this seems like it's acting as resistance, that is shortable to me. However, if it gets above that range, gets into the spike here, I would not want to short it anymore. I'd want to wait until it pushes above the high from yesterday and then pulls back down and looks for support in this range. And with this node of volume here, that should act as good support when the market pulls back down. Does that make sense? So if the market pushes up to this level and it can't get any higher, I'll go short with it. But if it pushes up to this level, gets above, pulls back down, and then it's finding support, I'll go long for a continuation higher. Okay? Yesterday's value was higher, and so that was a sign that the market was ready to push higher, and it did. Okay, so we have a breakout from balance. Balance leads to excess. Excess leads to balance. So today we either get more excess to the upside or the market needs to balance. Okay. As far as downside references go, the base of the B period single prints here is your first potential support when the market pulls down to the downside. If it doesn't find support there, look for it to head down to repair the poor high the poor low that it left behind yesterday. And then look for support upon that repair. If not, you work your way through the weak references left behind on Friday. So it repairs these weak references, does it find support? It gets to the base of these single prints, does it find support, so on and so forth. As long as it continues to go down, just stay short and monitor for continuation. Okay? So once again, this level up here, 43.76-ish. We get above it, come back down, find support, I go long. We get into it, find resistance, I go short. The poor low down here, we come down, we find support there, I go long for the rotation up. If we don't and we fall through, I go short and monitor for continuation to the downside. Okay? Until then, expect the market to grind around probably for at least a half an hour. That is the chop, my friends. Opening inside the previous day's range, inside the previous day's value area, increases the odds the market will chop. Scene of the crime? You mean that POC? Yeah, I mean the um, liquidation would have started right at 43.76, but the sell-off began from the POC at 43. I'm sorry, the POC at 43.76, but the true single prints would have started at 43.67. Boy, that's a tricky one for a dyslexic person. Is it 43.67 or 43.76? I don't know. I can't tell. Okay, so the NQ testing that 20 moving average on the 15-minute candles and nothing. No support whatsoever. Passing up and down through that a few times would be a sign of potential rotation. Yeah, Donkey, that would fit my narrative of finding resistance up in these nodes of volume, being a good shortable event. All right. Well, good morning to Bull Bear Rider. First one in the chat. Good to see you. RK Leon, good morning to you. Rad is here. Good to see you. So, yeah, Rad was asking, yes, if the market opens below references that the market would need to pass through to the downside, it's like they're automatically repaired. Okay, so you can see the overnight passed through the base of these single prints, but then we opened above it. I need to get my little drawing tool here. So this was where the overnight market closed. This is where we opened right here. So even though the overnight market passed through this level, because it pulled back above and then we opened above, it's not repaired. It has to be passed through in the regular trading hours. But there was like weak references elsewhere on the chart from yesterday, like here and here. And because we opened below them, those were repaired. Okay. Now, this level I have marked here, the base of the single prints, this is not really like when I mark it red or green, that means it's like a magnet. Obviously, red being a magnet to pull price down, green being a magnet to pull price up. This level here is just something to keep an eye on when the market gets there as potential resistance. Okay. But it's not like a magnet that pulls price. So that's why I leave that one there. Good morning, Nor Trader, Auto Trader. Good to see you. Bull Bear Rider, can I explain the POC? Yeah, let me just run through the good mornings and I'll get to that. Good morning, Normal. Good to see you. Marco, I was here on time today. I made it. A minute before the open, but there wasn't much to say because we had to chop. Choppity chop chops. Chris, good morning to you. D Green. I assume you mean on the definition of the POC. I'll get there in just a moment. Marco, good morning to you. Arthur, good morning to you. Philip, good to see you. Welcome. Jose, good morning to you. Amal, good morning to you. Captain Tiberius back with us. It's been a minute, bro. Good to see you. And Jitten is here. Phoenix is here. Good morning, everyone. Marco, no, I don't have the end period anymore. That was that 15-minute runoff period after the market closes. I've stopped doing that one. Good morning, Shk230. Good to see you. And De Intercasto, whose name I can't say, but I love it because it looks like royalty. Okay, so the question was from Bull Bear Rider, what is the POC? So the POC stands for the point of control. Okay. It is this green line. If you look at yesterday's profile, you see this little green line running across here. That is the point of control for yesterday. Okay. This one is the one for overnight. And what happens since overnight was rotational, it would be a good example. What happens is when a market is rotational, meaning it's just going up and down, it often passes through that line over and over again. So the market trades above it, pulls back down to it, trades below it, pulls back down to it, above, to it, below, to it, above, to it. I can do this all day long, every day. That's what happens in rotation. And that is how we use the point of control during a rotational day, is we assume the market will keep coming back to it. But on days that are trending, like yesterday started trending, became rotational, trended again at the end of the day, but we'll just still use it as an example. The way that we use the POC is we monitor it moving higher. So you see the little yellow B down here? And the little yellow A right down here, they're hard to see. Let me zoom in a bit. So you see how the A is yellow and the B? So that tells us where the POC was at that time of day. So in the A period, it was here. In the B period, it was here. In the D period, here, F, G, I, and then finally J. Okay? So what did that tell us? It told us that the point of control, which we think of as the fairest price for the market to do business, was going up and up all throughout the day. That is a signal that the market is trending higher and that the value of the market is going up and up. Okay? That, my friend, is the POC. You know me. Okay, market's still just having its morning chop. Again, nothing to trade here until we either come down to the base of these single prints and we look for support there, or we push up into this node of volume from yesterday, which starts at about 43.75. Okay? And then find resistance there. Prior to one of those two levels being reached, it's best, in my opinion, the way I trade, to just let the market grind up and down here and do its own thing. Pavel, good to see you. Welcome. Okay, well, the NQ is starting to poke up above yesterday's high. Visually looking at it, to me, this still just seems like morning chop. But, of course, there is always the chance that if we start to build up volume here, we can continue higher as a breakout above yesterday's range. So I would keep an eye on that. But this does, to me, just looking at the size of the overnight range, this could still fall to me within the parameters of just morning chop. So it's okay to trade long, but just trade it cautiously, keeping in mind it might need to pull back down. Back to the ES. So internals are mixed. The slower internals are bearish, but the faster internals are working their way towards bullish. They're trending higher, but finding resistance at that zero line. So further indication of chop. Correct. Yeah, Marco. The NQ looks more bullish. Just the overnight activity alone, right? So the overnight activity in the ES, they couldn't make a new high. And that one section where they got stuck for most of the time, that's what they couldn't really get above it. They got a few ticks above it, also created a poor high. Got a few ticks above it, but they really couldn't get above that mess that they were grinding at. But they did in the NQ. So that's like a little bit more bullish. Yes, sir. And they did it before the sell-off. So they broke through this resistance and were good. But then the ES couldn't. So the ES sold off and then pulled the NQ with it. So yeah, this looks more bullish to me. Same difference, Philip. You know, the point is that the NQ is stronger, right? So if the NQ had pushed its way up to these levels and the ES had continued, had also pushed its way up like this, the two likely would have just balanced at higher prices. But the fact that the ES couldn't get above it means the ES was the heavier weight to the downside. And so you may have visually seen the NQ start to sell off first, but it just sold off because the ES couldn't get any higher. Suffice to say, if I was an overnight trader and I was looking at this ES like this, I would be extremely bearish once it broke. So to me, okay, this is just normal rotation. Cool. We pulled back. We had a chance to buy at a discount. Great. We're just rotating. I'd think nothing of it right up until this J period sold off liquidation break style and then got below that W period low. At that point, I'd become extremely bearish. Like, oh no, we spent the whole night trying to get above the regular trading hours range and couldn't. Dump, right? That's like the signal of like, oh no. Hence why it then sold all the way down to here. Okay, so as that NQ continues to push higher, the ES is pushing its way up into this node of volume from yesterday. And then you got the one from last night right on top of it. So anywhere in here, the market could find resistance. If it pushes through and gets above the base of the spike here, look for support on a pullback down to the spike. If we start to bring in volume up here, start to turn some candles pink and purple up here, that is good for a long trade for upside continuation. Trading Donkey, Jesus, it was like one of those instant a computer did it kind of sell-offs. Oh boy, somebody knows something. Somebody knows something. Oh yeah, it was the bots that read like news headlines the moment they come out or whatever. That could be. Philip, you mean you're long for 20 points? I mean, I would stay long. We could break through this resistance, and that would be very bullish to get back up in the spike. Robert, does the overnight POC matter much? Not a ton, but it definitely is important to be aware of, particularly if it's what you would call a prominent POC. So I would say anything in the overnight with more than like 10. You can see here this one has 20 TPOs running across. So that's a very prominent POC. The overnight spent most its time here. So of course that's very important, right? If the millions and millions of traders who spent all night trying to get away from here couldn't, you ought to be aware of it as an important level. Obviously not the same as a regular trading hours POC, but still worth noting. Yeah, volume's low, tempo is slow, internals are mixed. It's not a market to take a trade just yet. Unless you're Philip over here killing the game, long and short. In which case, keep doing what you do. Okay, good taper on that high. I would have liked to have seen more than 74 contracts. I'd like to have seen over 100, but it is low volume, so I can live with that. Doesn't mean that it will be the high of the day, but just that if it is, it would be a good high. Okay. Yeah, so Marco, when I say it has good taper on the high, that does not mean it does not it doesn't mean it can't be revisited. It just as easily could. It just means it doesn't have to be. Right? When you have really bad taper, so for example, if there was like this contract with 500, if that had like 1500 or something weird, it would mean the market needs to come up and repair it. But the fact that it doesn't just means it doesn't have to come up. The only reason I note it was just because I've been waiting all morning for the market to trade up into this volume so I could see what happens. And what happened as soon as it got up in there made perfect taper, meaning the two-way auction process came to an end, and then it pulled back down to where the larger volume nodes are. So that just reiterates my previous assumption that there's some resistance waiting for us in these nodes. Normal, yes. So any big node of volume like this, particularly a big node of volume that has a POC with it, should act as support and resistance. So it would have been resistance as we tried to get through it. And then once we get through, it should act as support when we pull back down. But I would be less focused to the downside on this now and more focused on today's volume, right? If we're looking to the upside, we only have yesterday's volume to look at, but we can look at the volume from today to see where the market might find support. So obviously that's going to be this node here, right about at the halfback, and then this node down here at the lower end of the day. If we get through this node, it's safe to say we're heading down to test the base of the single prints from yesterday. Okay. Market still just chopping away, trying to break up into that resistance, push its way through. Internals, not saying it's going to have much luck. All the internals are bearish here. Not crazy bearish, slightly bearish, but they are bearish. Yeah, that's a problem, Jitten. Shorting the NQ works, but only if you're already in it at the moment that it has a massive sell-off. You got to be in the trade. What could go wrong? John, that's a great observation. Uh, I've never thought about it before, and this is probably the dumbest idea ever, but you could almost go like with the NQ when it opens inside a previous day's range and you think it's just going to have chop. You could almost just go long like 10, M NQ contracts and one NQ contract. You go short, and then you just like take profits on the short when it goes down, and then when it pushes back up, take profits on the longs. I'm just kidding. Don't really try that. That's stupid. But I'm just saying it's stupid because it could go the other way against you. Um, but it just feels like with the insane volatility that it gets, someone somewhere must be able to invent software that can do that. That is a busy morning, Kim. But it sounds like you're doing good so far. As long as the winners pay for the losers, you're a winner as a trader. All right, so here we go, pushing back up into these nodes of volume. So let's see if the market is able to break through to the upside. Again, pushing above this node of volume, getting back into the spike from yesterday, and then finding support when it pulls back down into it. So essentially pushing up to here, pulling back down, finding support in here would be extremely bullish for upside continuation. But first, they got to get through. They got to break on through. Okay, well, if you recall a few minutes ago, I said that all the internals were bearish. Now it looks like the ticks are working their way into some bullish territory here. That being that they are trending higher and they are now above that zero line. Of course, as soon as I say it, it pulls back down to that zero line. But as long as it can stay above, there are more buyers than sellers in the market. So they should be able to push through and repair this poor high. Market still struggling to repair this poor high. It's still poor. It needs 2 ticks of excess to be repaired. Value area on NQ is large. Let's take a look. Yes, sir. Look at that. Well, the NQ is breaking out like an MFer. So obviously that's very bullish, right? They pushed above the overnight high, which is even more bullish than pushing above yesterday's high. And then they're bringing in volume at those higher prices, right? That is a sign of buyers stepping in. Market is one time framing higher. Value is higher than yesterday. So this market is bullish. It's a bull market, you know. Whereas the ES isn't there yet. Value still inside yesterday's value area. As a matter of fact, the whole day's range is inside of yesterday's value area. So this looks neutral. That's the most John Q trade I've ever heard in my life. City Matt, you can't win them all. All right, there's the rapport. The rapport. There's the repair of the poor high. Okay, ES now one time framing higher. Ticks continuing to trend higher. So they're still not quite through this node yet. They got to get back into the spike, then pull back down and find support. All right, guys. Well, with the printing of the poor high, yep, another poor high. With the printing of the C period here, I'm going to call it quits for the morning on the public YouTube. If anybody wants to stay with me for the rest of the day, go ahead and sign up for the Brigade. There's a link in the description. It only costs $10 a month, and I often have advice to offer. Other than that, the market is one time framing higher, which is bullish. The POC has been pulled higher, which is also bullish, and it's running perfectly parallel with the overnight. But we're still fighting through this resistance. So as I've been saying all morning, look for a break above to pull back down to almost right where the market is right now, and then find support. That would be when I would trust the one-time framing more. Okay? Good luck, happy trading, and we'll see you all here tomorrow morning.